Okay, I'm here with Graham Smith from Voluntary Japan. Graham, welcome. Nice to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Shay.
Yeah. So go ahead, introduce yourself and tell us about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So my name's Graham Smith, and I am I guess you'd say, founder of Voluntary Japan, which is an initiative focused on spreading the philosophy of voluntarism in Japan and beyond through online activism, volunteering, and direct action. So I came to Japan in 2010. Of course, doing the thing that a lot of people do to teach English.
Right.
Same thing that James Corbett did, and I don't know about you, but
Yeah, that's that's
yeah,
that's how I started here too. Yeah.
yeah, and actually, I still teach English sometimes. But I became an anarchist here, full-on anarchist, voluntarist, libertarian, and then started this thing called Voluntary Japan. And as it stands now, it's kind of a loose network of different people in Japan here who are voluntarists, pro individual self-ownership, that are doing different things. My focus is kind of the spreading the philosophy and in the direct action realm, volunteering, and I work with a free school down the road here in Niigata, helping them, and they're kind of a radical school, like a real rare kind of gem here in Japan that's all about the unschooling philosophy,
Okay.
student-led learning. And I got a friend in Nagano who is a permaculturalist farmer. So with him and a few other people overseas, we kind of started this. Well, I started it, and then they were kind of fans, and then they kind of joined in. So it's this kind of a loose initiative, but recently I've jumped off from the teaching thing and have been blogging on Steemit for about 2 years now, and that enabled me to start doing this full time. So that's basically it in a nutshell, I guess.
That's amazing, man. Congrats on that. Now,
Thanks.
you mentioned a couple of words that many in the audience may not be too familiar with, or they'll have a different idea of what the word means. The first
Okay.
is anarchist. Now, a
Okay.
lot a lot of people are really not sure exactly what anarchist is. They have this idea of the guy throwing a bomb, a mass guy throwing a bomb or something like that, and that's not what you are, correct?
No, I'm not into randomly throwing bombs into buildings. It
Yeah,
does sound like fun, you
yeah,
know. Sometimes I feel like I might want to, but no. I guess it's always important to define our terms, right?
yeah,
Recently, in a lot of online debates, been coming to this conclusion with my fellow debater. We've got to define our terms.
yeah.
So to me, anarchist just means you go back to the etymological Greek root, no rulers, anarchos. And I'm a voluntarist, so basically, my body and my life are mine, and your body and your life are yours, and it's wrong to violate that. Don't hit, don't steal, really,
Right,
and that's
right.
all voluntarism is to me. And to its logical conclusion, that rules out things like violent coercion as taxation, where if you don't pay for ABC, you'll be thrown in jail. It rules out things like war, where there's just a bunch of victims that have nothing to do with the conflict. And so it's really just a pro-peace philosophy, but it also accepts self-defense. So,
Right.
yeah, that's what I mean by anarchist. So it's definitely not. I want less violence. Yeah, that's the voluntarist definition.
Yeah, and I feel a lot of people are confused about that. You know, they have this old, outdated definition of what anarchism is. Or they try and define it as a certain thing. But as you've seen, there are um, different different philosophies within the anarchist community as well. So,
Yeah,
um,
there's like a million of them.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
why I don't know. Recently, some folks have been saying, well, everyone defines voluntarism differently, but I disagree with that. I think it's pretty simple. There's nuance and disagreements once you get to the more higher extrapolated levels, but basically, it's Shea owns his body and his life. If Shea uses his time and his body to build a log cabin, that log cabin belongs to you.
yeah.
It's like that. So to me, it's pretty simple. Maybe I'm wrong there, and that's why so many people like to argue with me. But
Well, I
I don't
mean,
know.
it's especially on the internet, you'll find people to argue with you about anything and everything. So,
That
um,
is a good point.
but
That is a valid point.
but no, I think that's why it's good that you're helping spread this idea because you know, true individualism and voluntarism and anarchism is about just self-ownership and not not violating the rights of other people, and everyone is their own individual. So I think if more people actually understood that that is what this is, and that's what you're promoting, or what voluntarists actually believe, then I think a lot more people would actually kind of agree and understand that's they hold very similar beliefs as well.
Oh yeah, like I can't think of really even one person in my everyday life who doesn't think that you shouldn't violate people. It's just, a lot of them haven't really gone that far to extend it to government, which is kind of like this religion, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think, if I could divulge a little bit of our private chat before we started here,
Yeah.
you said you don't really like to be boxed in by labels. And I agree. And I think it primary to voluntarism is probably just a human understanding of, what works and what doesn't, and empathy and compassion. And then if you want less violence, that's the philosophy I've found that most closely lines up with reality, where, okay, there's scarce resources and everyone needs them to live, and we have different wants and needs, so we need some sort of like ground baseline rule.
Right.
And I find it funny, a lot of people say, well, it's utopian, there's always going to be violence. And it's like, yes, there will always be violence, but isn't it better to have a system that makes sense versus one that says, okay, this group of people gets to magically do what they want and this group of people has to obey them? Like, that's just bound to make things violent,
Right.
So yeah.
And one of the biggest things that I got from this is that if you tell people that you disagree with like democracy, that they automatically think that you're some sort of fascist or you want to control people, and it's complete opposite when you think democracy is just a sort of the majority ruling the minority in a way. So and when you explain it that way to people, they kind of go, huh? So
Right. And that's exactly what it is. And like you said, I think the words scare people away sometimes, man, because words like anarchist or what, you don't like democracy, because we're told from the moment we pop out of the womb basically that democracy is this holy great thing. But like, if you have an honest, respectful conversation and say, well, hey, what is it really? 51% gets to decide what the other 49% have to do. That's not fair.
Right.
And then most people, most good people, if they're honest, will be like, well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I agree 100%.
Yeah. So shifting gears a little bit. Now, you said you came to Japan in 2010, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So what was your main motivation for coming here? What is the path that led you to come to Japan?
Well, I told people I wanted to, have an experience or whatever, and go see something else, and I did. But really, I guess if I'm honest, I think I wanted to find a wife, and I thought Japan was cool, and just get the hell out of Indiana for a little bit, which is where I'm from,
Right.
to see something else. I had just graduated college. I had kind of gone with a major that I wasn't really into, but I just thought, well, I majored in elementary education.
Right.
Because everyone was like, oh, you're really good with kids. And I am good with kids. So I thought, well, I'll just do that. But by the end of it, I knew I didn't want to go into public schools. Being in the public schools, I couldn't do it with a clear conscience. So I just thought, well, what am I going to do? And I always had an interest in Japan. So it just worked out that I could get out, and got here and really loved it, and I'm sure you can relate. A lot of people said, why Japan? Why so far? Why not go out of state? Aren't you homesick? And I was like, I feel bad. I love you guys, but I'm not fucking homesick at all. I like it here. I feel at home here.
You get all those. I understand exactly.
Yeah.
Those types of questions. Yeah.
So and here I am. My folks just came this summer, and my mom was like, "Yeah, I can see why you like it here," but they're ready to get back to the U.S. That's just their home. And when I go back to the U.S., after 1 week, I'm like, all right, that's nice. Let's get back to where. For me, this is where shit's happening, and I think it's exciting to be here. And like, you mentioned before, everyone kind of has this image that it's this collectivist, like, why would you want to be there as a libertarian? But what I've found is it's shockingly I can live a more libertarian lifestyle here in a lot of senses than I ever could in the US.
Right.
And so I think that the whole thing about voluntary Japan is I want to share those aspects of the culture with people outside just to show that individuals are individuals wherever. And Japan's a cool culture, and simultaneously bring in some of those Western ideas here to let my Japanese friends know that, hey, it's okay
Right.
to disagree with something. It's okay to be, the blade of grass standing up, you know.
Yeah. The
So
nail that sticks out gets hammered down.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, which is true for every, statist society, but
Yeah, I mean,
uh,
Japan just has a phrase that defines that, but I mean,
for sure.
everywhere has that same sort of principle. If you don't fit in with the majority of the group, you're going to be ostracized in some way, you know. So,
Right, right. But
yeah.
I found here that like that's true. There's definitely some, and this, just really dark, black sides of the culture where it's
Oh
like,
yeah. Hmm.
like as a lot of the bullying in the schools is like psychological and really kind of evil. The overwork, the unpaid overtime that happens, and the state. The state is collectivist. I'm pretty sure if there was a news broadcast telling people to jump off a cliff, a lot of people would. But at the same time, people like in my community here, the individuals I interact with generally leave each other alone.
Yeah.
They're entrepreneurial and they don't really care what you do. And I can, and just little things like I can take a can of beer outside here without getting harassed by a cop and put my face put in the pavement. Why?
Yeah. Exactly.
You're public intox. Yeah, but you told me not to drive home. Well, too bad. Like okay, here no one gives a shit. Like I could, not that I'm advocating this, but I could pass out on the Bandai Bridge in downtown Niigata, and if a cop walked by, he might ask me if I'm all right.
Yeah. Exactly. That's
Yeah,
one thing I've noticed
it's a little
here
bit
is
different, and so that's just one little thing that I like here.
yeah, yeah. That's one thing I noticed when I moved here was the more of the like the individual freedom seemed people seem not to really care as much. Like you can, as you said, you can walk down the street, drink a beer, things like that. When I'm being from Texas, you can't really do that unless you're at a concert or something. Like a public concert, you're allowed to open a beer, but you can't walk outside of the park or whatever, or else you could get a PI. So
Right,
and
land of the free.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And my interactions with police here have been very, very pleasant. I mean, we may disagree fundamentally on what laws should be followed and whatnot, but just my day-to-day interactions with them have been nothing but pleasant. They're not seeking to, they're not actively seeking to find um, stuff just to find, other than like the speed traps, which is I think just common in every country. But
right,
yeah,
right.
yeah,
Well, yeah, I had this conversation on Facebook the other day. I was just watching like I guess what was the Japanese version of Cops or whatever, and I couldn't stop. There was just like a bunch of people agreeing with each other. Like, these dudes are riding their scooters down the street, drunk or whatever, and then the cop pulls them over, and the dude's like, "Yeah, I was driving a little crazy," and the cop's like, "All right, well, just get out of here."
yeah,
Oh, of course, like if anyone's watched documentaries from the prisons here, which they hardly ever let them in, it's black, it's dark. There's a lot of abuse and physical violence from cops. But like you said, on the street, I've found they're not. The ones I've found on the street are not seeking conflict and trying to escalate shit. Like I feel like a lot of American kind of they got this machismo thing,
yeah.
American cops sometimes. So yeah, there's that, and then there's the whole thing about I feel like there's not really the Catholic body guilt thing here. You've got
Hmm.
the hot springs, you've got, and there's a lot less. And I'm not knocking anyone who's a Christian or religious or anything, but there's a lot less of that kind of judgment here. People are just kind of like, well, I'm a Buddhist on this holiday, I'm a Shintoist on this holiday, but really I just live my life.
Yeah,
And I really love that, and people don't care if you're a Christian, people don't, so
yeah, yeah.
so many aspects are really and like I said, the entrepreneurial aspect, like it's not that hard to start a business, not so much red tape. I think this is stuff most people outside of Japan don't know about.
Right. Yeah, I've that there's been a lot of pleasant experiences in that regard. So that I was really surprised when I first moved here to experience that. So now, why have you always been in Niigata, or did you move there later on, or tell me sort of the beginnings of your Japanese experience.
Sure.
Mm.
Well, yeah, like you, in Tochigi, I've been here since pretty much day one. I got into Japan, did some work training for 2 weeks down in Okayama,
Mm.
down by where James Corbett actually is, down there in Kansai, and then came to Niigata. And yeah, I don't know, man. It's like it was, meant to be, as cheesy as that may sound, but I just loved the city. A lot of people hate the city, but I just immediately fucking fell in love with it.
Right.
And just eventually met someone and got married and now got a 5-year-old son, and
Wow. Yeah.
I'm just here. And I met a bunch of other expats that are kind of libertarian bent type people, and so yeah, I'm trying to make it happen. I feel like this is a good place to plant a seed of free market crypto voluntarist philosophy in Japan. It's
Right.
kind of like the new frontier,
Yeah. Yeah.
for guys like you and me. So yeah.
I have found there are a lot of more libertarian leaning people in the expat community. Not just Japan, but in other countries as well. And I think there's a certain nomadic sort of lifestyle that mindset that a lot of libertarians have. So you'll find a lot more of them, traveling the world, doing their own thing.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think it takes, I don't know, I want to say a special kind of, but a certain kind of person
Yeah.
to say, hey, I'm going to go 6,000 miles away just for the hell of it. Like,
Yeah.
you have to be a little bit individualist to do that.
Everyone thought I was
So,
crazy. They're like, "Why would you? What are you doing? Moving? You don't? Do you know?
yeah,
Do you speak Japanese at the time? No. Do you know anyone in Japan? No. Why? Why would you do that?" I
that's
just said,
so cool.
"It just, I want to. Like for me, it was, I come from a small, really conservative town, so I just needed to get out. And a lot of people thought, well, you can just move to a different state, or you can move to a
Mm,
city or something. And I'm like, yeah, but the underlying problems of what I disagree with are still there. So I just needed to. For me, it was also like just a personal challenge, just to see, a lot of people move away from home to a different city, but they're still in the same country. They still have a lot of comforts that
yeah,
they are used to. And I just said, now, if I really want to test myself, just go somewhere that is completely alien to what I'm used to. And, I was
yeah,
I was able to do it and survive and learn the language on my own. And, I'm not fluent in it, but I think I I can do almost anything that I could back home here,
right,
like in,
right.
in terms of being self-sufficient. So I think I've succeeded at least in that. You found similar thing, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, hearing you talk, yeah,
Hmm.
it's so cool to hear you say all this because, yeah, I feel the same, and it's really cool to meet someone else that has that, the same kind of understanding of what it feels like. And yeah, it is, I had people ask me the same things, like, why don't you just, go to Colorado or go somewhere far away? And it's like, well, I don't want to.
Hmm.
I want to do something totally new. And I wasn't scared of it, and I'm sure you can relate too. But there's a certain type of person that doesn't work out for,
Right.
and you've got to know that you want to do it. But yeah, I don't know. It's inspiring for me to hear like you tell your story because that's what I think is so cool too. Like you mentioned about a lot of the expats is there's kind of an adventurous spirit there. I think, which is huge, and it's important to the voluntarist thing as well.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I didn't know Japanese either. I knew a few words, and like you, I can get by if I can't talk about like nuclear physics or anything. Like it's hard to talk about like deep philosophical stuff, which for me is
Hmm.
fucking frustrating, especially with the voluntarist thing. I want to be able to get deep into that and have like deep, philosophical and political conversations. My wife helps with that, but that's still something that's constantly learning and improving on.
Yeah. How did your wife feel about this philosophy? Was it new for her, or was she already in the same sort of mindset? I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know how much personal information you want to give, but I'm
yeah,
curious about how she feels about it.
yeah, no problem. She was already a bit of a rebel, I guess. So the mindset was there, but it was never articulated.
Right.
But now she pretty much identifies as, and like we said, we're individuals before we're an ism or an ist. But
Right.
yeah, she's a voluntarist as well. She's into cryptocurrency. It was funny. I went down to Tokyo recently. I got the honor of interviewing Roger Ver down at the Bitcoin.com office. I walked in with this hat on.
Oh, great.
He's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, cool hat."
Yeah.
Like, "Where'd you get that?" And I was like, "My wife bought it for me." He's like, "What? Is your wife Japanese?" Like, "Yeah." He's like, "Awesome."
Yeah.
Because it's so rare for. And I'm not saying the Japanese aren't libertarian, but it's so rare for that to be articulated
Right.
as I'm a this or that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got a good catch. So she's pretty much, but she was always anti-authoritarian, like to an extreme degree.
Yeah.
So I think that it wasn't that hard to sell the idea of
Right.
hey,
Yeah.
hey, you shouldn't, I hate authority too, false authority or whatever. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, how about yourself? Are you married? You single? You got family? If I can ask, I'm
yeah.
interested to know about you. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. I'm not married. I do have a girlfriend who's Japanese. She's unfamiliar with the concepts, but I'm slowly adding those in there and see how she feels about it. Certain topics we've discussed, we align on in that way. People should be free to do what they want as long as they're not hurting anyone else. I think she's fully on board with that. So just introducing the more extreme ideas, just little by little, you know what I mean?
Scaffolding, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Takes time, right?
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. So, but just like you, individuals who I've met here seem to be very open and accepting of different ideas. I think it's just as a culture, the collective culture is sort of opposed to
Right.
a lot of that. So,
Right. I found like a lot of stuff that, Americans, and I'm an American, so Americans don't get offended. But I don't even like that label really, just from that culture or region. The thing is like reacting to words or like he said this word, so I've got to be against it. Or he said this word, so I'm on his team.
yeah.
Whereas here, like, I'm thinking of one Japanese friend in particular, like I'll drop some voluntarist shit that he's like, he'll just giggle at, like taxation is theft.
Yeah.
But when we talk about it, it's almost like, yeah, the word here that I'm sure that atarimai, like that's understood.
Yeah.
Why do we need to say it? Like I know it's theft, but fuck, I got to pay it. Like so
Yeah.
I found a lot of that here, which is cool because it's like, oh, I thought I was this radical libertarian guy, but a lot of the people meet here are like, yeah, I know. I wish it was that way, but it's not.
Yeah.
And
I've
it's like,
encountered
oh,
that a lot as well. Yeah.
let's do it, and this guy I'm talking about is an entrepreneur, always starting new businesses secretly, not telling his wife, like buying solar panel fields in other prefectures. Like, I don't know, it's it's funny.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
it looks like we're dropping out a little bit.
No. I hear you now.
Okay, but and I'm not advocating not telling your wife shit, by the way. But yeah, he's a very, very entrepreneurial, and it's funny to me because it's like, yeah, tell
Okay.
you about libertarianism. It's like, well, I already understand it. But I think where guys like you and I come in is actually pushing it forward and saying, no, but actually, we can change things. Like, and for an example, for your audience that might not understand the kind of downside of the collectivist mindset here, just a stupid anecdote. I worked in an office at the English school, and the laminator broke one day, and I knew how to fix it, and it was just jammed in there. I just needed a screwdriver to take this melted plastic out. And I told the manager, hey, I can fix this. Just let me take it up to the apartment real quick, and I'll fix it in 5 minutes. Oh, no. You have to, we've got to take it back to where we bought it. There's a way that we got to do this here. And the thing sat there fucking broken for 3 months until finally, like, I couldn't take it anymore. I went back to the manager and said, yo, you guys haven't done this yet. Let me do it. And unscrewed it, take it out, fix it.
Yeah.
And I think it's that kind of thing that, I think we can push. I'm not trying to take over the culture here, but, like, push a little bit more. to ask questions, like with the high school students I had, when I would say, "What do you think?" and they start like reaching for a textbook, even if there's no textbook. Like, wait,
Yeah.
what? I don't. It like
Yeah.
short circuits them. No, what do you think? I
Yeah.
can't, because I've been trained to never give my own answer. And it's like, but more and more, I think the younger people here are starting to kind of give the metaphorical middle finger to a lot of that stuff and say, we're gonna. With that comes bad stuff too. Like, you lose a lot of some of like the good stuff about Japanese culture. But
Yeah.
I'm more inspired by the people saying we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it our way,
Yeah, exactly.
and they're becoming disillusioned. So
That's
yeah,
one of the issues that I had before working with my business partner now. When I worked for schools run by Japanese, Japanese schools, it was always, anytime I had an idea, I said, well, I can get this done faster if I do it this way, and they're like, no, 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 don't do it. We have to do it this way. And I'd always say, well, why? Well, because that's the way it's always been done.
right.
And that would frustrate me so much. And when I was younger, I was like, no, that's bullshit. Why
Yeah.
should I, and it just caused problems for myself, honestly. But now, I um, my business partner and I, we run two English schools, and he's British, and but his mindset is still, he's very entrepreneurial and everything. And we had you brought up the laminator issue. We had a issue with a laminator that was broken, and um, as soon as it happened, he goes, "All right, give me a screwdriver. I'll just open it up and fix it now." And we're just like, "Yeah, that's exactly what we need to do." So it's great to be in an environment where, as long as something can get done, we get it done. Doesn't really matter if that's always how it is. So
Right.
the way it's always been done. So it's good to be around people like that.
For sure. And I think like the converse flip side of that like I really hope I can kind of share with people overseas and in the West, I guess, is like you can be an individual and still get a lot of shit done, like in a more powerful way when you work together with other individuals.
Exactly.
And that's the big thing about Japan here. I just participated in a festival where we, carried the Shinto, the Mikoshi,
Yeah.
the Shinto. It's like I guess a float, for lack of a better term, but it's this box
Portable shrine.
for those that, portable shrine,
Yeah.
very heavy, and everyone shoulders it, and you walk, about a mile across the city, and saying wash shoy, and everyone takes turns and sweats and drinks a lot, and at the end, I had all these people telling me like, "Thanks for participating. Now you understand what it is in Japan. We all carry the weight. We all work
Yep.
together." And that was really touching. And I think that shouldn't be lost on libertarians either, that yes, we're individualists. No one has the right to force you to do anything. But when you fucking work together with other individualists, you can become very strong and like build a really, really great things. So
Yeah.
I kind of like that. I don't know if you listen to Gary Vaynerchuk at all, but the pulling from opposite directions type of thing, because it's not antithetical to libertarianism to be in community with people.
Yeah. Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I think that idea has started to kind of infect some people, where it's like anything that is a joint effort is kind of a bad thing. But it's not if it's voluntary.
Yeah, exactly. As long as everyone in the group agrees
Exactly.
on
And everyone.
everyone. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So that's like I don't know if you've really read or listened to a lot of Stefan Molyneux, but
Yeah,
a lot
he's
of
the one
his
that turned me into an anarchist, actually.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No,
But I
no,
heard,
no.
I heard
That's
when he talked about taxation is theft, I was like, I can't argue. Okay,
yeah.
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, a lot of his early videos are what really got me on board with him. He kind of changed his tune in the past few years,
Yeah,
but
he's lost it, man. He's
yeah.
lost it. But
But even now, just saying his name, people, everyone sort of goes, it's almost like his name has become a little bit
right.
contentious, because he's part of they consider him part of the alt-right and whatever. But the man did have some solid philosophies, and the two biggest things I got from him were, voluntarism, as well as, not being violent towards kids. Like kids are,
yes.
and that is, of all the ideas that I've adopted that that people disagree with me the most, it's that. And you think, why would you disagree with not harming kids? But you know, that seems to be the one that people disagree with the most, is the treatment of children. You know.
Isn't that amazing? And it's not even like a rational disagreement. Usually, it's really emotional.
Yeah.
You can tell it's programming. Like if you say, "Well, maybe you shouldn't," and it's maybe we shouldn't hit our kids because that's going to teach them that violence is okay, and the next generation is going to be, perpetuating the same problems we have now. And no, there's this immediate like, "Rawr."
Yeah.
Like, okay, there's the red flag, but yeah, out of all the issues that someone could take issue with, you could argue that we need to pay taxes for, the good of the community. No, we need to hit our kids. Like,
Yeah.
kind of funny.
And people, the go-to excuse everyone says is, well, if you don't discipline your kids, if you don't hit your kids, they're gonna turn into undisciplined monsters. Like, no, they won't.
Yeah.
You just, for me, it's just that's someone who's given up on any sort of intelligent discourse with their child.
Yes.
And there's also a difference than, like if your child's playing out in a busy street and you have to physically remove them from the street, that's different than spanking them or hitting them and whatnot. Like, obviously getting them out of danger by any means necessary is required, but if they steal something and you smack them on the bottom or do whatever, all that's gonna do for them is make them want not to get caught. It's not gonna be motivating for them not to steal again. It's just, oh, if I get caught, I'll be punished for it. So I need to think of a way to lie or do something else. To me, that's all hitting kids does, is make them clever enough to think of ways to get around doing bad things, not doing bad things. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think it just compounds. It's a shame. I think is a lot of the problem is shame. I don't know if you've ever heard of Summerhill School in England.
No.
There's a book. It's awesome. School was started by a guy called A.S. Neal. He's dead now, but the book changed my life in college. Like, and I don't say that lightly, but it was all about that, punishing and why shame people morally. Why not just explain why the action is going to be detrimental and have that conversation? And people say kids can't understand. Well, if they can't understand, then they're not going to understand why you're hitting them.
Yeah.
And if they can understand, then you don't need to hit them. But getting to your road example, I had a guy say, well, if I pull my kid out of the road, and this is just recently, I'm going to hit him, I'm going to spank him because he needs to know how dangerous that is. And if he doesn't feel pain, he might not know that the car can hurt him. And I'm just thinking, well, I don't know about that, I think maybe he's going to be scared because he almost got hit, and then just be like, why are you hitting me now? If you're trying to save me from violence, why are you inflicting violence on me?
Exactly.
But I told that guy, well, if they can understand, then you don't need to hit them. If they can't understand, then hitting them is just going to be traumatizing.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to kind of combat that mindset. But what's funny is I used to talk about this, and I thought, okay, once I have a kid, these people will alone or respect my views more. But it's not the case. Even with a child now they move the goalposts and say, well, your kid's different. You're lucky. You got a good one.
Right.
I need to hit my kids, which is, I don't know why I thought that having a kid would give me credibility in the eyes of fanatics.
No, you'll never have credibility because with them, because like you said, they move the goalpost. Before you have kids, oh, you don't have kids, you don't understand. Once you have kids, well, your kid's different.
Yeah.
And I find that with a lot of arguments people have is anytime you bring any sort of legit argument against what their belief is, instead of putting themselves through the trouble of thinking and considering and trying to formulate even a counter argument, they just want to dismiss it and just come up with an excuse to why you're wrong, and then they'll shut down the conversation.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter the topic either.
Yeah.
Anymore, Shea, I've been trying to decide who is that kind of person, and just, you can't teach a pig to sing is what I always think. You waste your time and you annoy the pig. So it's like, some people will debate with you honestly, but if some people just won't even, like you said, get into it.
Yeah.
And I don't know your stance on, vaccine injury awareness, but my personal choice in my household, my son is not vaccinated. A lot of people think I'm nuts.
Right.
Had a guy just yesterday say, basically like, LOL, your kid's blood is on your hands, which this type of thing I would never say to someone, even if I was on the other side, because it's just cold-hearted and and weird.
Right.
But I said, okay, can we talk about this? I understand. I think you're coming from a position of caring about your kids, and I am too, so maybe we could find some common ground. And I just got, blocked, which is, to me, a giveaway that the person is not interested in coming to an understanding.
Right. Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of, I totally feel what you're saying, yeah.
Well, I think people like to make issues like that black or white instead
Right.
of, like you're either pro-vaccination or anti-vaccination, and same
Yeah,
with like climate change or anything, any of these hot button topics. It's like you're either this or that. It's like, no, there's very little in this world that is black and white issue. There's a lot of gray zones to so many issues, and people don't want to consider that.
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what the state wants, is that polarization. So we're just fighting with each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I actually don't like a lot of the people that I'm on their side because of the way they argue. The anti-vax people. It's like, you're not making good argument. You're just making fun of people that vaccinate their kids. How is that going to help?
Right.
They think what they're doing is helping. And maybe there's some parents that want to do like selective vaccination. Everyone's got to have a voice, but as it stands now, the guy actually told me on Facebook, anymore I just shame people like you. And I called him, I said, you're a fool because you haven't heard my argument. Like,
Right.
going around shaming people that you haven't even heard what they're saying, like, that's on you. It's
Yeah.
like, even if someone runs up to my house and says, oh my God, there's a fucking purple unicorn outside.
Yeah.
If I just say, well, that's a bad example because of course I'm going to not believe it, but you know what I mean? If this guy swears up and down every day, I see these unicorns come with me to the woods, I actually can't prove him wrong until I say, well, let's figure out what's going on. But just cutting people off
Yeah.
and shaming people is really a puerile kind of juvenile tactic that, I don't get it. I don't get it.
That's
For me, it's religion. That's how I define it anymore. It's
Yeah.
a kind of religion.
Well, I think a lot of people embrace certain ideas religiously, not just religious ideas, but
Exactly, yeah.
economic ideas or political ideas or anything. They take it personally, and I don't
Yes.
understand why people attach their emotions to these things, like it's part of their identity that they're
That's
this
why.
or that. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
but why? Yeah, issues are important, but to get personally offended because someone disagrees with you on a vaccination or on climate change or anything like that, like, get over yourself. I mean, let's just look at this objectively. Facts versus, other. You could argue which facts are right or wrong, but I never. I mean, I used to when I was younger, but the older I get, the less I care emotionally about certain topics. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I disagree with you, but look at it this way. I don't get angry if someone disagrees with me.
Right, as long as you're not forcing it on me.
Yeah.
Let's disagree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the mark of like an open-minded person. Like, I mean, I used to be a statist, I guess, by the proper definition of thinking you have to have a government, and I was a hardcore hyper-religious Christian arguing with evolutionists in chat rooms. But I feel like there's a difference. There's a certain kind of person that even in that programming can look back and be like, okay, I'm getting very emotional now. Like, I remember talking with guys in the infidels.org chat room when I was hardcore Christian, and they're just slamming my arguments down about, like, even I, like, at that point, I was like, okay, I've got no fucking rebuttal. What do I do? And I remember this one day I said, you guys, I can't answer your questions. I'm going to go read about this and I'll come back. And it was just like in the chat room, just like a slow clap. Like, I was the first one they'd met that could say, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, I feel like a dude like you and other people, even if they're still status or still whatever the position, as long as they can like be a little bit self-reflective, I think there's hope for all of us.
Yeah, so being that, I don't dismiss anybody that disagrees with the way I view the world, because if I did, I would be really alone, you know? I mean, um, I think it was also a Stefan Molyneux video where he said you have to push away people that
Uh,
believe in taxing and voting and stuff, and I'm just like, no, I mean,
and your
because
family
yeah, and your family, and I'm like, that's
defooing.
yeah, that whole shit. I was just like, okay, this is starting to get a little weird,
Bit
and
cultish.
yeah, and then the more and more about his inner circle and all that stuff came out, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, this is a bit weird. But just like anything, just my philosophy now, the way I take in information is, I'll find good things that someone does or says, and I'll take that from it. But just because
Yes.
they're a bit screwy in other areas doesn't mean I dismiss what good they have done, or good ideas that they have come up with, So,
Hell yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like we're all screwy. Like, and that's one thing I'm coming to I'm realizing more and more. Is like I've got screws loose in certain areas, and I need people to point that out. And you look at a guy like Molyneux, who's fucking brilliant. Like I used to think he was just logically unassailable.
Yeah.
Like listening to him talk about the state is like, okay, this guy, there's no way. But the moment you think that a guy like that is just, you start to be about him instead of what he's saying,
Yep.
then
Yep.
you're religious again, like, or
Mhm.
you're being religious about it. But yeah, so like you, I think, and I think this is important for a lot of voluntarists, is interdependence is okay. Like we're independent, but being interdependent on, it's like the free market. You trade in graphic design and I trade in, some other work or craft or money. We need that. And I think it's the same with ideas. Like if, Stefan Molyneux says something excellent, I can take that on board. I don't have to write it off just because he's a Trump humper now. Like I can take
Yeah.
it on board and say, well, that actually is correct. And, it's not fun. It's not sensational. Like your position is not a popular one because it
Right.
doesn't make for good Twitter debates and
Yeah.
flame threads and CNN headlines. Look at this guy, Shea Roberts, who is reasonable and rational, and will calmly talk about topics.
Yeah.
That's not very clickbaity,
No.
but that's what's needed.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, and that just, to me, that just motivates me more to be who I am, because if I find people disagree with that, I kind of know I'm on the right path, if that makes any sense,
Yes,
like,
yes.
yeah, I'd rather be the sane one in the conversation and not screaming and like something off of Fox News or CNN where people are just screaming at each other over asinine things. You're just like, can't you just have a civil conversation about this? No, but that doesn't bring in the ratings. That doesn't bring in the money. So
Right.
so I think a lot of the anti-Trump stuff is not necessarily about being anti-Trump. It's what's bringing in the media numbers, and all the money.
For sure.
So yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because if you do that, like try to take that, logical approach to things, actually, it's funny, you will end up being a provocateur unintentionally because it really pisses people off, which is fun. I like that.
And it's weird. Like I've been, not that it really matters. I don't take it personally, but I've been blocked on Twitter by people that I like, for certain things that I've disagreed with them on, and I wasn't trollish about it. I wasn't doing it to attack them. I was doing it just to bring up a counterpoint, and instead of actually engaging with me, they just block me, and
Yeah.
that actually made me lose a lot of respect for these individuals, because they don't want to, they argue, oh well, it's all about conversations and sharing ideas, but as soon as
Right.
you share something that's against what they're saying, it's like, nope, block, you're done, bye, get out of here,
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
yeah,
I'd rather have someone just fucking tell me to fuck off and disagree with me loudly instead of someone that says I'm so open-minded and open to debate and then they block you.
yeah,
That's like so intolerable to me. But the guy that's just, some angry bonehead that's honest about it, that's totally cool. We can talk.
yeah. And I this recent thing with Alex Jones being deplatformed and stuff. I did a couple of podcasts ago where I was talking about free speech, and you know I there's very little that I probably agree with Alex Jones about, just because I think he's pretty loony on a lot of things, but he shouldn't be silenced because of that. I mean, and people say, well, he's been deplatformed by private companies. They have a right to silence him, which I agree with. Yeah, if you violate the rules that they set out, they have every right to silence you. My thing is, it's not so much like the First Amendment in America, freedom of speech. It's the principle of freedom of speech in general across all cultures, across it doesn't matter what government you're part of. People should have a right to speak their voice, and no one should silence them for that, because that just leads down a slippery slope of censorship.
For sure. And you
Yeah.
know what else, Shay? People are saying that like, oh, it's a private. Facebook's private, Twitter's private. Okay, great. They are government embedded, but
Yeah.
we as private as they can get, they're private, I guess.
Yeah.
But they're ignoring the bigger picture of the collusion, which it's like just because they're private doesn't make the collusion to censor a guy less relevant or important. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that really takes away from, okay, all these guys are simultaneously shutting off, deplatforming Alex Jones. Yeah, they're private companies, so forget it. Well, okay, but they're all colluding, so isn't this dangerous for all of us,
Mhm.
And I think that goes back to the black and white thing you just mentioned a second ago, where it's like, okay, it's got to be this or that, and which, not to ramble here, but that kind of segues me into something another friend who used to be a libertarian but has been disillusioned. He says that libertarians are not compassionate, and he wrote this really moving blog post about his I guess his mother's going to pass away soon. It's just super sad. But he's like, I can't reach out to my libertarian friends because they'll tell me, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, all this stuff. And I was like, dude, you got a bad impression of libertarians. But there's a lot of libertarians like that. Like, it's private. It's my property. They're not actually looking at the bigger picture. And at that point, I think you've become a religious
Religious, yeah, exactly.
a religious, individualist, which doesn't make any fucking sense at all, but whatever,
No, I completely agree, and it's just because you're an individualist doesn't mean you should lack empathy for other people. It's like the Ayn Rand thing, virtue of selfishness. It's not about being self-centered. It's about being your own person, but that doesn't mean you completely dismiss the feelings and ideas
can't.
of other people. Well, you can't. You have a right to do that, but
no, I mean, you can't. Even if you're like 100% self-interested, true self-interest will by default take into account the people around you.
Yeah.
And like one of the things I've been like harping on my own show a lot is logic. You have to have logic to have empathy, as I define logic. Like, people like to separate it. But if I can't logically understand that, okay, we're both human beings, I'm assuming that this other person has feelings and thoughts like me, so I'm going to feel their pain in a sense. Like, that's logic,
Yeah.
So this whole thing about, self-interestedness is, if you're going to have a good time in your life, if you want to make money, if you want to have good relationships, you kind of got to take other people into account, right? Otherwise, you're just going to demolish yourself. So, I hate that when people attack Ayn Rand like that. I really hate it because it's like, no.
That's another one of those loaded names that you can't mention without being people automatically boxing you into a certain group or belief system.
People that haven't even read the books, like,
Yeah.
she's an asshole. Have you read Atlas Shrugged? Do you know? You got the idea?
No, but my professor told me that she was an asshole, so I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think even who did was it wasn't Colbert, was it what's his name, that British comedian,
The one who was on Drew Carey, Craig Ferguson?
No, it was this week tonight, last night. What's
John
it called?
John Oliver.
Yeah, I was so disappointed when he just lambasted Ayn Rand with all these straw men. I was like, dude, you're just a fucking puppet too. Like, it was really, because he makes me laugh sometimes, but all those guys, of course, are. But it was disappointing.
And that's another thing. Just because I disagree with a lot of these people doesn't mean I'm going to completely shut them out of my life in terms of being entertained by, like, I
Right,
pretty
right,
much
right.
disagree with anything people in Hollywood espouse politically, but that doesn't mean I'm going to not watch their movies or anything like that because I disagree with their politics. I mean, that makes no sense to me. How people just say, "Oh, I'm never going to watch this again because they supported Hillary Clinton," and I'm like, okay, who? That's your loss, like,
Right,
they
right.
put out entertaining things. Now, if you don't want to watch it, that's your choice, but I mean, just because you disagree with them politically doesn't mean you have to completely, shut them out of every aspect of your life.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, like I can understand cutting someone, like saying, okay, this guy totally violated his principle. I'm not going to really take him seriously or take it with a grain of salt, or maybe I will even cut it out. But if something changes, I'll go back. But if it's just like you're saying, like limiting yourself, like
Yeah.
I'm never even gonna, even if I want to, you
Hmm.
know, check something out again, that's, I think you're just boxing yourself in for sure,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
it's like the religious thing too. Like, I went through very similar experience you did, where, hardcore Christian, then, started
Oh,
doing
wow.
my research. Yeah, yeah. Started doing my research, and, for a while I wouldn't say a militant atheist, but I was definitely, I would get into arguments with people, but I've kind of come, I wouldn't say full circle because I'm not a religious guy, but I would say there's more to this universe than our human minds can perceive. That doesn't necessarily mean fill in the gap with God. It just means that we don't
Well,
know. We don't know.
that's a very
Yeah.
logical
Yeah,
position.
exactly. It's like we know there are more than three dimensions, but our human eyes, our human brain cannot perceive more than three.
Right,
So, like,
right.
that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means we can't perceive it. And like I said, people say, well, then that means God did it. I'm like, no. It's like, it just means that there are things that we can't explain, and we will never be able to explain because we're limited. So, and I apply that to everything. There
Yeah.
we can't know everything, and the only thing we can do is look at the facts that we have and make our best judgment based on that. But if new information comes, you shouldn't box your mind into old
Yes.
ideas. You should be
Yes.
open to accepting new things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amen, brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, yeah, and
Can I
that's
get
why
an
I had
amen?
hallelujah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I had to get out because I couldn't stand it. I can't stand the idea that you have to accept something can never change.
Yeah.
Whatever that may be, a political view, a scientific view, because at that moment you're dead.
Hmm.
Your learning stops, your creativity stops, and just looking at nature doesn't do that. Nature changes, it evolves, it adapts to the realities. Like, you know, uh, as a Christian, I couldn't understand why God would stop doing shit after the book was published. You know what I mean? Like, oh, that's it. Well, that's it. Like,
Yeah.
what? Why? Well, just because. Stop asking questions.
Yeah.
Like, nah, I can't. I can't. But
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
said, I mean, I think it's cool. The logical position. People don't like it, but sometimes the most logical thing you can say is, "I don't know right now,"
Hmm.
and I think that's a mark of
But see,
maturity.
that falls into that category of being non-confrontational and not being black and white. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but that doesn't
Yeah.
grab attention. That doesn't cause contention, and so you have to
Right.
either be 100% atheist or 100% religious, and like, no, no, you don't. You can look at both sides and say, okay, that's
Can
some.
you imagine
Yeah.
like a CNN headline like oh, sorry, it just broke, my signal just broke up there.
Okay, no, I hear you now. The
Uh,
last thing I heard was CNN headline. No.
oh yeah, I was
Hmm.
just like saying, can you imagine if there was a CNN headline like Trump seriously considers a policy he's unsure of. He wants our help. Like, like that shit brings about peace. Like, oh, this guy's actually like, Trump says I don't know.
Yeah.
Like that's
Well,
the kind of shit that's not it's not it's not sexy.
yeah.
But oh, wow, that's doesn't make me want to go kill people. Maybe we can help each other.
Yeah, and the thing that I noticed with the media and Trump is no matter what he does, they'll hate him. Like, I disagree with Trump on so many things, but the thing he did with North Korea At first I thought, okay, calling Kim Jong-un names over Twitter is not going to be productive. But the fact that he's the first sitting president to meet with a North Korean leader and that it paved the way for some sort of peace, I thought, well, may not have agreed with his tactics, but did any other president try and extend an olive branch to this guy ever? No, you know. So like, at least that's something. And people wouldn't even give him credit for at least trying to do that. They're just saying, "Oh, he's Trump. He's evil." Whatever. It's like, okay. Like I said, I'm not going to defend Trump on almost anything, but if he could at least get the conversation of peace with North Korea going, it's like, hey, you did something right, you know?
Yeah, and like what I would say is my personal view is like when I saw that headline, I felt this really good feeling because I think we all want peace, right?
Right.
And then immediately I think, okay, it's all orchestrated.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I think. But regardless of that, I think what's most important about what you're saying here is to just say it's bullshit because you hate Trump
Yeah.
and not actually look at it seriously is bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, if it was some theater, I view all politics as theater. Well, hey, maybe if it was a legitimate thing that he did and it brings about peace, well, that's great. But the moment you've got people on the left saying everything about Trump, which is maddening because look at Obama, like fucking disgusting.
Yeah.
But I think it goes back to that same level-headedness that you're talking about. And I say it's like not black and white, but I think it actually can be very provocative. And one of the things I like to do most is to kind of provoke people and kind of irritate them in a respectful way in saying, hey, this is the logic of the matter, look at it. And that triggers a lot of people. And I think being an irritant is kind of important, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, you saying that, oh, well, look, this thing brought about peace. Why are you attacking it without looking at it? Well, because that's my computer program, and now you're fucking pushing the escape button. Stop it. I don't like it. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's just it. I mean, whatever the motivations for that were, who knows? But at least it seemed to be a positive thing, but people won't accept it just because of who's behind it, And
yeah, let's at least consider the possibility, right?
Yeah, and that's all I'm trying to bring up with that point. And when maybe I didn't articulate myself right with the people I was talking to about it, but they immediately went to, oh, you're a Trump supporter, you're a racist, and I was like, what the hell, man? Like, I can't say one, not even neutral thing about Trump. If I'm not 100% anti-Trump, then I'm a white supremacist, racist Trump. Like, okay, I can't even talk to you if you're going to be like that. That shit is annoying. Yeah.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
Like, it's so frustrating. Like, I have to laugh, or I just want to kill myself.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have found my dad came to visit. I told you my parents came to visit a while back, and my parents are Trump supporters. My dad's a little bit more like me, critical. Like, he's a supporter, but he's not like a worshiper.
Yeah.
So like, I'll be like, I think Trump's, part of the deep state. And he's like, well, I've thought about that. You're probably right, but blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very
my similar
mom's
to
more
my
like,
dad, actually.
Yeah. My mom's more like, he's a good man. It's like, well, he bombs children. Yeah, but he's I love my mom. Don't get me wrong.
No.
But what was funny, I did concede to my dad that in general, I have had conversations with people on the right, which I consider it all leftist because it's all socialist. But the conservatives, they tend to have been more reasonable with me, even if they called me like an SJW because I disagree with their views. But after a while, some of them have said, okay, you're not an SJW, I'm listening. Whereas on that kind of commie side of things, you almost never get it. You just get called a racist.
Yeah.
You make points and there's like no open ear. And I think that has to do with conservatism being linked to the reality, like individual self-ownership and logic. But yeah, I hear you, you just get called a racist or whatever the moment you even hint that. Yeah, it's such a weird binary.
Yeah, I mean that's also why like adopting the label of libertarian nowadays, people will group you in with alt-right and Nazism just for being libertarian, and like where do you get that? And they'll say stuff like Chris Cantrell. I think that's who it
Can't
was.
Cantwell.
Cantwell, that's right. Like,
Yeah.
but of course I came across him before the Charlottesville thing, but even when I listened to a couple of episodes of his podcast or his radio show, and I thought, this dude's just an asshole. I don't care if I agree with him. He just seems like a dick. And lo
Yeah.
and behold, he became the crying Nazi, So,
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah. I heard him say once on one show, and I couldn't believe they didn't call him out on it. He said, they said, if you were president, what would you do? And he said, I'm not joking. I'm not joking. He said, I'm not joking like 3 times.
yeah,
I would take all the Democrats, registered Democrats, put them in boxcars and gas them. And I said, okay, this is a fucking joke, right? Like, because
Yeah.
he's a libertarian, right? And he said, I'm not joking. And the guys on the podcast, which was Liberty Hangout, which I'm sorry, I don't know your opinion of them, but sometimes they say good shit, but they've gone off the rails a lot. But they didn't call him on it, yeah. And it's like, okay, Chris Cantwell, yeah. And now we're getting lumped in with, okay, you're a libertarian, so you want to murder people. Like, whoa.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and it boggles my mind that if people actually looked at the principles of what libertarians believe, they're completely anti-Nazism. Like it's opposite. It's like I would say Nazis are closer to socialists, which I mean it's in the name. It's in the name National
Right.
Socialist. They're closer to socialists than they are libertarians by far. So
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. That's what I mean. Like, even like Trump is a socialist. I kept saying that to my dad to see his reaction, to try to like push his buttons. And I was really proud of my dad. He was like, well, yeah, you're kind of right, but he's better than these leftist commies.
yeah,
I was like, okay.
yeah, yeah.
So like socialism light is better than heavy socialism. I could see where you're coming from.
Yeah, and
I see your logic behind that.
yeah, that's like with my mom. She voted for Trump, and I'm like, how could you, as a woman, vote for Trump when he's talking about grabbing women by their genitalia and all this? And she's like, and she concedes now. She's like, yeah, he is not a moral man at whatsoever, but he was better than Hillary Clinton. I'm like, well, I mean, I can't argue with that, but it's just like turd sandwich and douche nozzle, from South Park.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
they're both horrible choices.
Well, good on your mom for at least saying he's not moral, because I know so many people that are like, yeah, he said grab her by the pussy, but he's a man of God. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
That's and I'm not saying you can't be a man of God, whatever that is, and say something like that, but it's like, do you realize?
It's like
it's like anti-abortion, but let's drone bomb kids in Yemen. Like,
yeah. If you're really pro-life, you would be against war. You'd be against the death penalty. But a lot of these people who are anti-abortion are for the death penalty and for war.
Right, and I think that's where it
sense.
comes in, where it's like we can kind of like either disengage or have some compassion, because it's so obvious, like, this person is following a program.
Yeah.
They're not thinking for themselves.
Yeah.
They're not using the brain that nature gave them, because there's no way, if you were thinking for yourself, you could support, be so anti-abortion and support, bombing school buses.
Yeah. Or like what happened in Yemen, like the Saudis used one of our bombs that we gave them, and it bombed the school children in Yemen, and you don't hear about Yemen at all on the news. That is something that people don't know what's going on over there, and that just blows my mind.
Yeah, it was funny how CNN handled that too. Their article, they never acknowledged like U.S. They just said, coalition, and then they said, hopefully we can get the UN in here to bring peace. So they just, put the UN as like the savior, and, conveniently avoided any sort of responsibility or guilt.
Yeah, yeah. And, just years and years of trying to argue with people, I've just come to the conclusion you're not going to get through to most people. You can keep trying, and instead of being confrontational about it, I ask people questions now. like it's more of like a Socrates sort of thing. Just
now you're really gonna piss people off.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, because I think they would rather me be confrontational and screaming at them with my opinion than questioning why they believe what they believe.
Yep. Because
Yeah.
then they can go, aha,
Yeah.
you're losing it. You're angry.
Yeah.
And they can pick out where you fall off the cliff.
Exactly.
Staying calm just drive them nuts.
Yeah. So one issue I wanted to talk to you a bit more about
Yeah.
before we go is about the unschooling. So
Cool. Yeah.
that is something that not a lot. I mean, a lot of people know about homeschooling, but they don't really know about unschooling. So could you care to kind of explain what that is first and how you came across finding this sort of gem in Japan of all places of a free school?
Yeah, I'd love to. You know what? Let me plug in my computer though, real quick, because it's about to run out of battery. So
All right.
give me just a second here.
Sure. Sure.
Shh. Okay.
Okay. Welcome back.
So, are you back? Okay. Yeah, I was about to run out of juice there. That wouldn't be good. Yeah. So, unschooling as a philosophy is just it's really goes hand in hand with individual self-ownership. It's student-led learning. So the idea is we don't need to force learning. We learn to walk, learn to talk without a textbook, without a teacher. And public schools are really doing more damage than good, really, to young people by corralling them down this set path and locking them up for 12 years, basically. So unschooling is the kid finds what the kid wants to do. And through that, all other subject areas that you need for life will be connected. For example, if a child wants to become an archaeologist, well, he's going to have to learn about geology, going to have to learn math, going to have to be literate, going to have to be able to talk to people, going to have to network. So, and that will all be done effortlessly, as it were. Even though they might work their ass off, it'll be fun because they're bringing their unique gift to the world, to the universe, which I feel like, not to wax metaphysical or too, spiritual here, but like everyone is different, whatever, if that's from evolution or God or nature or whatever. With unschooling, everyone can kind of bring their unique thing to the table,
Right.
and that helps everybody. Whereas the school system is like, do this, here's your choices, blah, blah, blah. So we ended up moving out to the country here in Niigata, which is a city on the northwest coast of Japan. But we moved out of the city and into the country, and just serendipitously, right down the road was this school called P&T, P&T, and it's called a free school. And I thought, okay, well, let's see what this is. I doubt it's going to be really like an unschooling sort of philosophy, like A.S. Neal or whatever. But we went there, and this woman, Suzuki is her name, founded this school 10 years ago. Our philosophies are exactly the same.
Wow.
It's peaceful parenting. It's unschooling. They have a school, right? So it's not, but everything's voluntary. Kids don't.
It's as
They
close
don't
to
have to go to
unschooling.
class.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's unschooling in a building if you want. So
Yeah.
I still consider it unschooling, which is a better way to do it here. It'll keep the state off my case a little bit
Yeah.
for my son. But
That's what I was
just
going to ask you. Sorry to interrupt. That's what I was going to ask you.
that's okay.
How you said you have your son is 5, correct?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you won't be putting him into the public school system.
No,
Like, I'm not sure exactly how that works here.
Yeah, it's kind of a gray zone. It's not illegal. Some people argue that it is. There's like several different laws that come into play. It's kind of this, bureaucratic cluster F, but you can do it. So basically, the thing is, the child has a right to an education according to the Constitution, but it doesn't specify what type of education.
Okay.
So it depends on the school board in your area. Some will look really like critically on you, but how they've been advising us, this school down the street, go to the orientations at the school, show that you're not, keeping your kid in a cage at your house, and give your kid the choice. And my son does have the choice. Like I didn't, I'm not religious about unschooling either.
Right.
I told him, if you want to go to public school, that's your thing because there's more kids or whatever. That's your choice. He knows that.
Yeah.
But he loves it at the other school. So you do that, and you let the community see or whatever that you're not, a monster. And what's neat here is the public school here quite uniquely has a relationship with the free school, a respectful relationship, because they've seen the kids coming out of the free school. They've seen what they can do,
Yeah.
how mature, how well adjusted they are, how talented they are. So we moved into a really unique situation here. But
Well,
yeah, their school's awesome. I mean, the kids are, one girl's 17, and she's just a masterful oil painter.
wow.
She would have never been able to pursue that in public school, and she just didn't want to go. So her mom, being this fucking kick-ass lady, said, okay, well, I've read all these books. I'm down with the philosophy. I'm not going to make you go. I'm going to start a school here in the middle of Podunk, Japan, that everyone's going to reject. And she's caught so much shit. So like, I just really admire her, because to do that as a Japanese woman in this society, like, she just totally bucked the system and started
Yeah.
this successful thing. So yeah, that's pretty much the long and short of it.
Well, that's pretty amazing, man. I mean, you're certainly right. You got lucky finding that, and I think that's actually good that there's a community built around that, because a lot of arguments people will have against like homeschooling or something is the kids won't have any social interaction. They won't have any, and when I went to school, I met a few homeschooled kids, and they were, I'll just be honest, they were weird because they didn't have any social interaction, and I think
Yeah.
kids need the social interaction, and if this lady, it seems like she figured it out, because if you have the philosophy there and a building where they can interact with other kids, then that's the perfect combination, because they'll get their social interaction that way. So
Yep, and that's of course remains one of my biggest concerns and priorities for my son, is making sure he has that. He's got friends. A lot of the friends are in school, so we got to make sure that that's there. So yeah, I appreciate the community there for sure, because that's what it provides. Like, that's kind of the whole reason is, okay, there's a bunch of like-minded people there that can hang out. And it's funny you mentioned that. I have met weird homeschoolers as well. I've also met really well-adjusted, mature homeschoolers, like my sister, homeschooler, former homeschooler. But there they are, like, and it tends to be like, in my experience, evangelical, hardcore Christian families that lock their kids up, and I'm
yeah,
not pro. I'm not pro that
yeah,
either. But the school down the road, like, it's been really cool, because they invited me to speak to the parents last month, which was like huge for me. I volunteer there, but I had never been invited to give like a presentation, do a Q&A with a translator. And they want me because she's been preaching this shit for 10 years now. And some of the dads especially are like, yeah, okay, this she's nice, but fuck, a bit nuts, I think.
yeah,
So
yeah.
she's like, please come in as a former licensed teacher from America that's in Japan, that's now voluntarily chosen to put your kid in here, your
Yeah.
bilingual kid in here. Come in and tell these guys why. And I was so honored and pumped, and like, it just so happened at that time my parents were here and my wife's parents were here, and they, my wife's parents think I'm fucking nuts too. Like, you're not vaccinating your kid.
Yeah.
Now he's not going to go to school. Oh God, what's wrong with you, Graham?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, I'm sure
they're
your
they're
wife's
really
family is really. I'm sure family reunions are quite interesting then.
yeah. Well, luckily they're really sweet people, and they mind their business.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure other people would have disowned me, but they all got to be there for that presentation, bilingual, and left, and everyone said, wow, I really understand it more.
That's
So for
cool.
me, like with Voluntary Japan, first it's the philosophy, because that's what changes the individual, which is the only way anything's going to change, from the
Yeah.
individual out. But second, it's that, like, doing things with the unschooling by default, because I have a son, and if I can help spread that here, that's kind of the concrete direct action end of things, I think. So
Well,
yeah, I'm super pumped about it. And actually, for people in Japan, there's actually a lot of Facebook pages, and there's free schools like this all over. I don't know if they're as hardcore, like, on point about the philosophy, but for anybody that's watching your show, and in Japan and wondering, you don't have to put your kid in a public school if you don't want. So yeah, and anyone that has questions, please contact me, voluntaryjapan@protonmail.com, because I'm getting advice from this Japanese woman who's been on the battlefield for 10 years now,
Yeah.
and so I'd gladly like relay that same shit to anyone that wants to know.
yeah, she's a veteran when it comes to this. So, no,
Yeah.
that's great that you're you're promoting this and you're getting the word out, and especially when you talked about that presentation, and people like your wife's parents left with a better understanding. They still may not agree, but they at least understand
Right.
understand it, and I
Yeah.
think that's vital first steps, is just at least understanding what you don't understand. So
Yeah, and it's funny, even my sister after reading about that, and my mom too was like, "Oh, I get it now."
hmm.
I was like, I thought you guys already got it, but I guess not. It's good to articulate things.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, at least my wife's parents know I'm not just, like
Some
the Al
crazy, some
Al
crazy.
Qaeda or
Yeah.
some weird guy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how they feel about you being non-Japanese, but that's one that it's a still kind of a rarity. So that's one thing, and then the vaccination thing, and then the unschooling. They're just like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
what next?
Dude, I almost feel sorry for my father-in-law sometimes. Like I look at him when we're having these conversations, and he's just like staring off into space, like shaking his head. I'm like, sorry, dude. This is the deal. This is the package.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but he's cool though. He's cool. He's just like, I'll do what you want.
Well,
So
hey, at least they're not trying to take control. So
yeah,
that's a good thing. So
yeah.
well, Graham, thank you very much for coming on the show. How can everyone find you online? Just tell us everywhere that your people can find more information about you, and I'll include the links in the show notes, so don't worry about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, well, it's my pleasure. It's great meeting you and talking to you. Really, really easy to talk to, and great to meet a fellow Japanarchist, if you
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
But yeah, Voluntary Japan. I mainly blog on steemit.com right now. Steemit, and you can just search at Voluntary Japan. I'm on Twitter, YouTube, D Live, which is like a new YouTube based on the blockchain where they can't censor you, which is awesome. Um, YouTube and Twitter are getting kind of questionable. I'm actually on a shadow ban right now on Twitter as we speak for, I don't know, commenting to Madeleine Albright, something that was offensive, I guess.
Oh, interesting. I'd like to pick
Yeah,
your brain about that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that was weird. Apparently, I can't be too anti-war or something. I don't know. Where else? Yeah, YouTube, Twitter. Just if you just search Voluntary Japan, and like you said, you got the links. I did just start a Patreon. I am doing this pretty much full time right now. So if you like what I'm doing, any of you guys out there, you get special access to exclusive stuff. I don't like doing like the paywall thing, so I put out my stuff to pretty much anyone. But there is special shit for the Patreon people, and you can support me there. Otherwise, yeah, 2 blogs on Steemit, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, wherever. So,
Okay.
and you're on Steemit as well, so I'm excited about that.
I am on Steemit. I haven't started anything yet, but you're lighting the fire under my ass to get started. So I'll
Cool, cool.
yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. It looks exciting. So I mean, there's so many other topics that we can talk about, but we'll save that for another time. So
Yeah, sounds
yeah.
good.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming on, and I'll point everyone in your direction. And any last words you'd like to give the audience?
Last words. I don't know. No, do your thing.
Yeah.
That's it. Do your thing and don't listen to anyone else, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Graham. I
Cool.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.